Kris Kobach is with me. It's great to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
I'm glad you made it through the security line. Intimidating.
Yes, indeed. But I guess we have special guests coming to CPAC this afternoon.
So you're a busy man. What are you up to right now?
Right now, I am helping to with We Build the Wall. It's this organization that grew out of a GoFundMe campaign.
Sure.
To build the wall on private land with private funds.
Yeah.
And also thinking about the 2020 Senate seat that's open in Kansas. Haven't made a decision yet on that.
Sure.
And still writing columns for Breitbart.
Yes, and one of the more knowledgeable folks on the planet on the issue of immigration. And I'll start with something a little negative, and it's a happy show for the most part. We're having a great time here at CPAC, to be honest. Like, I'm honestly having a really good time. But CPAC is kind of treating it as though the immigration issue is solved. There's one panel, as far as I know, on the issue of immigration, and it's moderated by Rich Lowry from the National Review, who is part of the reason why the Republican establishment airballed this issue for a decade, more than that. He is directly accountable. It is surreal to me. And again, credit to CPAC on big tech, credit to CPAC on China. They're doing some great stuff. They got the president, they got the vice president. It's a great environment, all that stuff. But airball on immigration.
Yeah, I agree. And, I wouldn't even call it a panel. As I understand, it's just Rich Lowry asking Ted Cruz a few questions. It's not like these other topics where CPAC, on China, 4 different panels, all kinds of experts brought in to give attendees information they may not have. This is just kind of a topic for them to talk about with Senator Cruz. So, in the past, CPAC had, and I'd been on immigration panels in the past, they devoted a lot of attention to this issue. Why in the world CPAC is spending so much time talking about China, which is, of course, an important issue every year, but it is not the number one issue right now, defining the conflict between the president and the
yes.
judicial legislative branch.
And almost to the number, people are agreeing on this. And here's the thing, Secretary, the thing that bothers me the most is this is the lowest hanging fruit for Trump Nation.
Yeah.
And I've made this point, and I know regular listeners are going to be annoyed by this. I've made this point 20 times on the show. But we bought a house last year. It needs a fair bit of work. And the folks who've been coming in, I live in the area, the D.C. area, and a lot of blue-collar guys, a lot of them of color. A lot of them don't like the president. A lot of them very sympathetic on his immigration policies, because they know they're not getting a raise this year, and they might be losing a job if we're importing a bunch of cheap labor to undercut their job. This is Trump's America, and we're not talking about it. We're moving on. Is this a solved issue? The border's gaping.
It is huge. I was just down there last week. There are huge sections of the border that have either nothing whatsoever to impede people coming in, or all they have is what's called a Normandy barrier. That's just a horizontal steel beam supported by some posts to stop a car. But you can hop right over it or walk or get on your knees and go right under it. It's ridiculous. Let's put this in perspective. We have 1,933 miles of border. Of that, fewer than 100 miles can have border barriers that can stop a pedestrian.
Yes.
100 miles out of 1,900 miles. The other 1,800 are wide open to smugglers and people just walking right in. President Trump got 55 miles of funding from Congress. Yeah. If he's able to reprogram all the money that he'd like to, another $8 billion through the statutes and national emergency, he'll get another 250 miles. So guess what? He gets 300 miles. We have 1,800 miles that needs to be secured. We are so far behind on this problem.
Yeah.
And you have the problem of people claiming asylum coming in falsely. There's so many problems in our immigration system. President Trump is the one we elected to solve them. And here we are at CPAC talking about other stuff.
Yeah, so we got former Kansas Secretary of State Kris Kobach with me, who I think, without a doubt, should be the next Department of Homeland Security Secretary. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if my endorsement makes enough of a difference, but you have it if you need it, Secretary. Let's talk about the spending bill, which I thought was a disaster, and it's frustrating to listeners. But look, I'm going for integrity. I'm not going for happy talk. I love this president. I think he genuinely wants to secure the border. I can't imagine not supporting him in 2020. We are way behind on the biggest issue. We've already noted that. But what are the specifics? What is it that we're spending on? What are we missing?
So this bill had all kinds of poison pills in it. The president was boxed into a corner. I think the members of Congress were pushing him to sign it of his own party. Certainly people in the White House were pushing him to sign it and ignore the poison pills. But the biggest one is this de facto amnesty for people who are potential sponsors of unaccompanied minors. So you're an unaccompanied minor. You came in allegedly at age 15. Of course, you came in probably with several of your cousins, and you were sent in by your family. But anyway, you came in at age 15, and now anybody who's a potential sponsor in the United States, not just your uncle that you know is here, but also all your cousins who are over the age of 18, any distant relatives of a potential sponsor, they can claim, I get this de facto amnesty, which means ICE cannot remove any potential sponsors or the household members of potential sponsors. So let's say you have 4 potential sponsors who are distant relatives of yours, and each of them lives in a household with 5 people. Well, that's 20 people that just got a de facto amnesty and cannot be removed under the terms of this bill, which is now law. So that was the biggest problem with it. In addition, it says we can't impose any fees on people coming into the United States from either Canada or Mexico. The reason they stuck that in there was because that was one of the ways Trump could force Mexico to pay for the wall. Slap a surcharge on people coming in through the Mexican ports of entry. They prohibited that as well. They also said, okay, here's 55 miles worth of funding for the Rio Grande sector of the border, Rio Grande Valley sector, which is the farthest eastern one up against the Gulf. But they said, here are half a dozen places you can't build. So here are 6 giant holes that have to be in that sector in the fence. It's infuriating.
And it sounds like where the wall is going to be built, if it does get built. First of all, I found it very depressing earlier this week, and I didn't bring it up for the sake of not trying to bum out the audience, but all of the border prototypes that have all been demolished. So they're just an admission that we're not actually building the big, beautiful wall with the big, beautiful door that we were promised. That's not coming. We're getting the bollard fencing, which I'm probably fine with relative to other folks. It seems like the law enforcement crowd digs it. I'm for any sort of a barrier, whatever is easiest to get up. That's all fine with me. I know some of the audience is a little more hardcore than me on that one. But are we even building in the right spots? If things get up, are we building in the highest traffic areas?
The Rio Grande Valley sector is actually the highest traffic sector right now. We are building in some important high traffic spots in the Rio Grande Valley sector.
Good to hear.
And I would add this too. The fact that, let's say the president gets 300 miles and the courts go on his side, as they should, with all of these legal challenges, that's good. It doesn't solve the problem, because think of the border as a giant leaky hose.
Sure.
We've got 100 leaks. Well, maybe with this spending, we'll patch 30 of them. Okay. That means that we have fewer places now where the drug smugglers and alien smugglers can go through. And I'll say a positive note about the bollard fencing. So I was just down in Arizona, as I mentioned. We were up on the Montezuma Pass at one point, which is a sort of a mountain pass right on the border. And on the east side of the pass, it was about 10, 15 miles of bollard fencing.
Yeah.
On the west side, wide open. And we talked to Border Patrol officers too. The east side of the pass is pretty secure. The Border Patrol doesn't need to spend much in the way of resources and time and vehicles on the east side because they've got that giant 18-foot bollard fence. The smuggling goes on the west side because there is no significant fencing there.
Wow.
And so what it does, the bollard fencing does seem to work. It does force the smugglers to use the open corridors. And it's pretty imposing. It's 18 feet tall. You have the steel bollards, but then at the top, the top 4 feet is a solid steel panel. Yes. So you can't just shimmy up and hop over the top. So I think they like it because they have seen that it works. So I'm not deeply disappointed that we are stuck with that. It's a decent model that works and has been proven effective.
Good. So, but you guys are hearing not a blanket negativity from the secretary. You guys are hearing I think a solid, sober analysis of what's really going on. Making progress, but not enough. Not enough. It's too slow. So what can be done? I know you've got your project where you're trying to at least get something up in terms of a crowdfunding effort. Give us a little bit on that.
So, yeah, that effort started as a GoFundMe, raised $20 million in 20 days, most contributions ever in any GoFundMe
with Brian Kolfage, who
the Air Force veteran.
Wonderful guy.
Yes, and he is he's still heading the effort. He just said, look, let's instead of writing a blank check to the federal government, which there's no way you can bind them to spend it on the wall, let's just create a private effort and recruit private landowners and build on their land. So we are doing that.
Okay.
Best case scenario, we might be able to build 50 miles in the next year. Now that's best case scenario. The other thing I think that needs to be done is state efforts.
Okay, talk to us about it, because you're an attorney. People don't know this. You're a highly educated guy, and you're an attorney, and you're a doctor as well.
It's PhD.
PhD. Yeah. So you've got the intellectual half behind this. So talk to us about what can be done legally with the states.
So the states I would be looking at would be the states that have the greatest amount of land that is state land on the border, and that would be California, Arizona, and Texas. Now, California being California, let's just, Sacramento's probably not going to help us. But let's look at Arizona and Texas, where you have Republican legislatures. Those states have huge swaths of state land, state park along the border. And if they chose to, they could pass bills saying, we will build with state money similar bollard fences along our state, and that could give hundreds of miles of additional fencing along the Texas border and along the Arizona border. Arizona's already passed one law several years ago to encourage the building of state-financed walls.
So what's the timetable on some of that stuff?
It all depends on the state legislatures. They're meeting in session right now. I don't know if there are bills currently pending. I hope there are. I know that legislators in Texas are talking about it, and the Texas Attorney General has been talking about it. Paxton and the governor,
great guy. Abbott, yes,
and the lieutenant governor. So I know Texas is talking about it, but we need, at this point, more than talk. We need to get the dollars spent and the ground broken to build those.
We need to get going, because this is the signature campaign issue.
It is
for the president. Is the signature issue facing the United States,
and it's why he won the Rust Belt states.
Right.
Let's just cut to the chase.
Yes, it is.
You're not going to win the White House by convincing Kansas to vote red again, or by convincing New York to vote blue again. You're going to win the White House by convincing Ohio, Florida, and one of either Pennsylvania, Michigan, or Wisconsin.
Those blue-collar workers, those rank-and-file Americans, the president has your back. That's the message. And how can you make the case with the border open? So he's got to show some progress. He doesn't have to finish it. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying if there's not 1,800 miles, it's a lost cause. But I'm saying that we need to get something substantial, and it's going to be... Let's go to the emergency declaration.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dumb talking points, frankly, by folks like, I think it was Julian Castro, who was saying that, well, now the Democrats are just going to do a bunch of emergency declarations, as if it took the president creating the precedent for the Democrats to start behaving lawlessly. Of course, that's not the point. Let's talk about the facts of the emergency declaration. What is your viewpoint on this? Is it legal? Do you think it's a long slog to get it to hold up in the courts? What is your perspective?
So I do think the president, his use of the National Emergencies Act of 1976 will succeed. And the point that is being made by Mr. Castro and others, apparently they haven't done their homework. Look, we have had 58 national emergencies already declared.
And half are still active.
And 31 are still active. So his threat, well, there'll be lots of emergencies declared by Democrat presidents. Well, guess what? There already are.
Yes, that's
and,
right.
and I brought a couple of examples with me. Did you know that of the 31 national emergencies that we already have in effect, perhaps you didn't remember, but in 2006, Bush declared a national emergency about what? About fraud in the Belarus election.
My goodness.
That was a big one. And in 2015, President Obama declared a national emergency regarding what? A failed coup in Burundi. Now, these things had no tangible impact on the lives of Americans.
It's a national emergency,
right?
By the way.
But so the notion that we might declare too many national emergencies on things that aren't really national emergencies,
ridiculous.
In contrast, the crisis at the border is a national emergency. Thousands of Americans are dying every year because of either homicides committed against them by illegal aliens or drunk driving, other traffic accidents by illegal aliens. We know this. The Angel families are a perfect example of this. That is a national emergency. The thousands upon thousands of pounds of drugs coming in, killing Americans. That's a national emergency. The terrorists coming in, national emergency. The tax burden that we all feel because of illegal immigration.
But again, timetable. The courts are essentially mini legislatures, and they want to stop the president.
In some districts, yes.
In some districts. So the effort is going to be robust to stop this by any means necessary, because the left knows what we know, which is this is a silver bullet for the president. If he gets substantial wall up, he's going to cakewalk in 2020 unless the Democrats field someone spectacular. If he doesn't get the wall up, the Democrats have a chance. So they know this as well as we do. They're going to do everything they can to stop it.
Yes.
Can they kick the can long enough that they can claim they stopped the wall?
They will claim that they stopped the wall, or that the Democrats will claim to their donors and to their base that they stopped the wall. It'll all depend. I mean, it's semantics. If they let's say best case scenario for the Democrats, they get in front of a super liberal judge in the Northern District of California. The judge issues a preliminary injunction, and the Democrat lawyers are able to delay the case. Their objective is get a preliminary injunction and then delay. And so let's say they get that. I think they won't be able to delay too long. Let's say we get a final decision in the next 6 months out of one court. Then the administration's attorneys in the Department of Justice will move immediately to expedite the case, either to the Court of Appeals, or they may even try. They'll expedite to the Court of Appeals and then try to get the Supreme Court to take it on an expedited basis. Maybe best case scenario, it gets to the Supreme Court. I want to say 16 months from now. So in the run-up to the election, but they still won't be a Supreme Court opinion, I don't think, by the election. It's really hard to get a quick opinion out of the Supreme Court when a case comes out like this. It's possible. It's possible that the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will rule in the president's favor. I'm absolutely certain of this because the law is so clear.
Yeah.
And it's not just the National Emergencies Act. There are other statutes as well that empower him to move other funds, to use Department of Defense funds to secure the border against drug trafficking and to secure the border for the nation's defense.
So Kansas Secretary of State Kris Kobach, a last note today, the data's back in on the travel ban, and it's been wildly effective. And I'm sure you have some of the details on this, some of the specifics, but a big picture, this was one of the things the president was hammered on, and it worked.
Yeah, it worked, and it was legal. And any person, a non-lawyer reading the law can say, yeah, that's pretty clear. The president has the authority to declare that certain individuals coming to the United States present a threat, and he can exclude them. The Supreme Court came to the obvious conclusion, yes, he can certainly do this. He's going to win on the National Emergencies Act, too. Look, there are conservatives and there who say, yeah, gosh, the National Emergencies Act, that really does give the president broad authority, and maybe the legislature shouldn't have given the executive this authority. I agree. That's a reasonable argument to make, that the act shouldn't have conveyed. You could try to convince me that maybe it should be tightened, because right now it basically says whatever a president thinks is a national emergency is a national emergency.
Sure.
And that's why the Burundi coup was declared a national emergency by Obama, the failed coup. But that's an argument for the Congress to have in redefining the National Emergencies Act going forward.
Right.
But the way it is right now, it's so broad. The president is on solid ground.
Good. And look, I wish it didn't come to this. I wish they could have just passed legislation in January of 2017 on this topic, but they didn't do it. And I'm glad the president's doing what he can. And I'm glad you're doing what you can. Did you have a website or anything you want to throw out?
KrisKobach.com, where they can read my Breitbart articles and read some other stuff that I've got up there.
And we love having you in our stable of intellects. It's why we're so formidable. Guys like you, Secretary of State.
Thank you.
Kris Kobach, and the most knowledgeable guy on the border, period, along with our own Brandon Darby. I would say those two. You guys are the two guys I would go to, bar none, and my pal and
Brandon knows his stuff, no doubt about it.
He sure does. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.